The formation of ancient Greece and its warm relationship with the Persians. Part 1. The early days and the sparring sessions with the Persians. Back in the era when people were busy hammering bronze into the shape of shields and spears, in the land that would later be called Greece, two major civilized operating systems began to emerge, running on completely opposite styles. First was the Minoan civilization on the island of Crete, a kind of five-star resort with magnificent palaces and no defensive walls, because they were confident in their navy and figured, who would start trouble with people this chill? The second was the Mycenaean civilization on the Peloponnesian peninsula, which looked more like a military-industrial complex, with walls so thick you could drive a chariot on them. The Minoan civilization reached its peak form around 2700 to 1450 BCE. Their economy was quite simple. Grow grapes and olives, make exquisite pottery, then load it onto ships to ship to their neighbors. They were talented architects and artists, building enormous labyrinthine palaces, most notably at Knossos. This place was decorated with vibrant frescoes of dolphins, bulls, and young men and women performing dangerous acrobatic leaps over the horns of bulls, an extreme sport that no one could quite understand. It was also here, according to legend, that the king kept a rather oversized pet named the Minotaur, half man, half bull, who lived in the labyrinth and had a very particular diet. While the Minoans were engrossed in art and sports, their Mycenaean brethren on the mainland were focused on grinding and building up their military. Around 1600 BCE, they started getting visibly rich and powerful. Then, the inevitable happened. They gradually overshadowed and eventually took over the Minoan cultural center. The Mycenaeans built cities surrounded by colossal stone walls, established powerful trade routes, and became the new top dogs of the region. Around 1184 BCE, an international love drama sparked the most legendary war of antiquity. It all started when a Trojan prince kidnapped Helen, the wife of the king of Sparta. In response, King Agamemnon of Mycenae, the brother of the cuckolded king, assembled the most formidable military alliance ever seen and sailed to Troy to demand justice and, conveniently, to plunder its treasures. The war dragged on for a grueling 10 years, chronicled in detail by the great Homer in his two novels, the Iliad and the Odyssey. Finally, unable to breach the city's sturdy walls, the Greeks resorted to a one-of-a-kind trick. They pretended to retreat, leaving behind a giant wooden horse as a gift. The Trojans, in a moment of premature celebration, dragged this gift into their city. That night, Greek soldiers hiding inside the horse emerged, opened the gates for their army, and orchestrated the most legendary and painful unboxing in history. But the glory was short-lived. After the costly war, the Mycenaean civilization itself was exhausted and began to decline. Other gangs rose to power, along with invasions from northern tribes. Fortresses were abandoned, the economy froze, and even their system of writing was forgotten. The collapse of the Mycenaeans plunged Greece into a slump that lasted for over 300 years, a period historians call the Dark Ages. Around 800 BCE, Greece began to reboot its system. Old texts were lost, and the Mycenaean script was ancient history. So they borrowed the alphabet from the Phoenicians, tweaked it a bit, and created the Greek alphabet. From then on, people started writing things down again. Because Greece's geography is fragmented by mountains and seas like a chessboard, they couldn't form a unified nation. Instead, countless small, self-governing districts emerged. later known as city-states, polis, each with its own laws, its own attitude, and always ready to pick a fight with its neighbors. From about 750 BCE, as the population grew and land became scarce, the Greeks began a massive expansion campaign that lasted 250 years. They went everywhere, setting up colonies as if they were playing a game of Risk across the Mediterranean map. To the east, they settled the coast of Asia Minor and Cyprus. To the west, Albania, Sicily, and southern Italy, eventually spreading to France and Spain. Even Egypt and Libya got Greek franchises. Major modern cities like Syracuse, Naples, Marseille, and Istanbul all originated from these outposts. By 600 BCE, a few cities had become star players with major influence: Athens, Sparta, Corinth, and Thebes. Each of these cities controlled a vast rural hinterland and, of course, endlessly bickered with each other for political and economic dominance. In Sparta, the military aristocracy held all the power. A legendary reformer named Lycurgus created a constitution that turned Sparta into one giant army barracks. From birth, every Spartan male belonged to the state. At age 7, they were taken to the barracks to undergo an unbelievably harsh training regimen to become the world's finest soldiers. They even had 2 kings at the same time, probably as a backup in case one fell in battle. Sparta quickly became the undisputed master of the Peloponnesian Peninsula. Athens, in contrast, pursued a path of commerce, maritime power, and arguing. They fired their last king in 683 BCE. After years of political struggle, an aristocrat named Cleisthenes implemented bold reforms, giving birth to something called democracy, a system where power rested with an assembly of male citizens. Of course, citizen did not include women, slaves, or foreigners. By 500 BCE, Athens and Sparta had emerged as 2 superpowers. One loved philosophy, theater, and shipbuilding, while the other loved the gym, throwing javelins and marching. This difference made them view each other as mortal enemies. But all internal drama had to be put on hold because a much larger threat was looming from the east: the colossal Persian Empire. In 499 BCE, a fellow named Aristagoras, the tyrant of the city-state of Miletus, a Greek colony under Persian rule, got an idea to conquer the island of Naxos but failed miserably. To save face and avoid punishment from the Persian emperor, he incited all the Greek city-states in Asia Minor to revolt. Aristagoras ran to Athens and Eretria to ask for military aid. With their help, in 498 BCE, they marched on and burned Sardis, an important Persian provincial capital. When the Persian king Darius the Great heard the news, he flew into a rage and swore revenge on Athens and Eretria. He even ordered a servant to remind him 3 times before every meal, "Master, remember the Athenians." Now that's how you hold a grudge. The revolt dragged on. By 494 BCE, the Persians launched an all-out assault on Miletus. In the naval battle of Lada, the Ionian fleet was crushed, and the rebellion was mercilessly stamped out. In 490 BCE, Darius I, still fuming, sent a massive fleet to pay a visit to the Greeks. The Persian army landed at Marathon, near Athens. They had about 72,000 troops, including 12,000 elite cavalry. The Greeks had a mere 11,000 heavy infantrymen, led by the general Miltiades. The Greek strength was the phalanx formation, a dense block of infantry, disciplined as a moving wall of shields and spears, a human porcupine, ready to skewer anyone who charged it. In contrast, the Persian army, though numerous, was used to fighting as individuals, and they were a bit overwhelmed in a disciplined formation battle. The result? A shock that shook the ancient world. The Greeks lost only about 200 men, while the Persians lost 6,400 and had to flee back to their ships. The Battle of Marathon became a legend. A soldier named Phidippides was sent to run the 26 miles, 42 kilometers, from Marathon to Athens to announce the victory. He famously shouted, "We have won!" and then dropped dead from exhaustion. His spirit gave birth to the modern marathon race. 10 years later, Darius's son, King Xerxes I, was determined to avenge his father and finish the job. This time, he went all out, assembling an army that ancient historians described as countless as locusts, possibly over 1 million strong, along with a fleet of 1,000 ships to flatten Greece. Facing the threat of being completely wiped out, the Greek city-states, who often despised each other, had to put aside their differences and form an alliance. King Leonidas of Sparta led a small force of about 7,000 men north to block the enemy at the narrow pass of Thermopylae in the summer of 480 BCE. For the first 2 days, the small Greek force used the terrain to their advantage, successfully holding off the massive Persian army. But on the third day, a traitor named Ephialtes showed the Persians a hidden path to flank them. Realizing they were surrounded, Leonidas ordered the bulk of the allied army to retreat while he, along with his 300 Spartans and a few hundred other allies, stayed behind to fight to the death and buy time. They fought to the last man, creating one of history's greatest epics of bravery. Meanwhile, the Greek navy was commanded by Themistocles, a cunning Athenian politician and general. Seeing that Thermopylae had fallen, he decided to withdraw to the narrow strait of Salamis to prepare for a decisive naval battle. With no one left to block them, the Persian army surged south, capturing and burning the deserted city of Athens. Themistocles convinced the allies that the only way to win was to lure the Persian fleet into the cramped Strait of Salamis, where their superior numbers would become a weakness. According to the historian Herodotus, the Greek fleet had only about 310 ships against the Persians' 1,207. Themistocles even used a trick, sending a fake deserter to the Persians to tell them the Greek fleet was planning to escape, causing the Persians to rush into the strait to block them, and the trap was sprung. In the tight space, the large Persian ships became clumsy, lost their maneuverability, and crashed into each other in chaos. Seizing the opportunity, the smaller, more agile Greek fleet charged out and attacked. King Xerxes, watching the battle live from a golden throne set up on a mountainside, could only watch in horror as his fleet was annihilated. Fearing he would be trapped in Europe, Xerxes hastily retreated to Persia with the bulk of his army. The rest of his forces were mopped up in subsequent battles. The Battle of Salamis was the turning point of the war. It not only saved Greece from annihilation, but also dealt a severe blow to the prestige and morale of the Persian Empire. The Civil War, Athens versus Sparta. After driving off the common enemy, Athens, with its powerful navy and greatest contribution to the war, rose to become the center of the Greek world. This was their golden age, but it was also when tensions with Sparta intensified. Athens ruled the seas and its economy boomed. Pericles, the brilliant leader of Athens, turned the city into a true empire, commissioning the construction of the Parthenon and many other great architectural works. This was also the era of great minds like the philosophers Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. At first, the other city-states accepted Athenian leadership, but once the Persian threat was gone, they began to resent Athens's bossy attitude. In 431 BCE, the Peloponnesian War, a full-blown civil war of the Greek world, officially broke out. The deep-seated cause was that Sparta and its allies could no longer tolerate Athenian expansionism. The war lasted for 27 grueling years, a classic showdown between Athens' naval power and Sparta's land power. In the early stages, Sparta repeatedly invaded Athenian territory, but the Athenians would just hide behind their walls. In return, Athens used its navy to raid the coastlines of Sparta's allies. In 421 BCE, the two sides signed a peace treaty, but it was as fragile as an eggshell. In 415 BCE, a demagogic politician named Alcibiades persuaded the Athenians to launch a reckless expedition to Syracuse in Sicily, a Spartan ally. This expedition turned into a catastrophic disaster. Alcibiades, facing charges at home, defected to Sparta and gave them advice. The entire Athenian expeditionary force was wiped out in 413 BCE. This defeat severely weakened Athens. Seizing the opportunity, Sparta, with sponsorship from their old enemy Persia, built a powerful fleet. In 405 BCE, the Spartan admiral Lysander annihilated the last of the Athenian navy. In 404 BCE, exhausted and besieged, Athens was forced to surrender. Sparta occupied the city, ending the golden age of the Athenian Empire. Sparta became the new hegemon, but this position didn't last long. Their militaristic and harsh rule alienated the other city-states. Just a few years later, other cities, including Thebes and Corinth, allied with their old enemy Athens to fight against Sparta. In 371 BCE, at the Battle of Leuctra, the Theban general Epaminondas used a groundbreaking tactic to shatter the supposedly invincible Spartan army. The Spartan king himself was killed in the battle. Thebes rose to become the leading power in Greece, but this period was also very brief. Epaminondas was killed in another battle, and Thebes lost its most brilliant leader. The Greek world, after nearly a century of internecine warfare, was left exhausted. All the city-states were weakened, and while they were busy settling scores with each other, a new power to the north had been quietly growing stronger: the Kingdom of Macedon. In 346 BCE, the Thebans themselves made a fatal mistake by inviting King Philip II of Macedon to intervene in their internal affairs, paving the way for a new chapter and the final chapter of independent ancient Greece. The arrival of Macedon completely changed the game, setting the stage for a great figure who was about to shake the entire world. Thanks for watching.